Hey friends, this will be our last video here for week 1. We're going to talk about Git or GitHub. Actually, I'm sorry, Git and GitHub, the hosting provider for Git here. So you made your GitHub account, and then I'm going to show you here. You don't actually need to go through all these steps yourself because we're going to use a link that I'll show you next time around. But I'm going to go to my account here. So github.com/Erchinesky will take me to my account. And a repository is just a fancy folder. So Git is a source control tool. Its job is tracking source code. So I'm going to make a repository for CIS 2454. And this will be summer 2022. There we go. And I'm going to make this a public repository. So all the code examples that I do in class will be out here publicly on the internet because it just makes life easier. You can make private repositories that only I have access to and only people that I want to have access to will have access. So when you folks are working on your labs and your projects and your assignments, aside from this first lab, you'll be doing them in private repositories. That way you have access and I have access and no one else has access. A nice common thing in repositories is a README file. It can say what this repository is about, what this project's about. And then a git ignore template is very important here. So notice there is none for regular PHP, but we're going to do the one for Java here, because later on we're going to use Java. And then I'm going to license this with the MIT license. You don't need to pick a license for yours. This is just a nice, easy, open license here. So I'll go make this repository. Now this is actually going to be our course repository. So all the things that I do in the course are going to show up here. So I'll go add that here to the content and course information, and I'll add a link for it here. So I say this is the course repository. So all the code examples, again, will show up there, and you don't need to go and upload or download files from D2L, anything like that. It's just all linked right from there. So, oh, I'm sorry, that should have been external. Did I do that as an external? Nope, we want that as an external resource. Yep. So the external link, or just control click, we'll open it up. It'll take you out to that repository. Now, what we're going to do, from that repository, and when you folks have your own repository, you can make a copy of it. Right? It's just a folder that keeps code. So I'm going to go to code and say open with GitHub Desktop. The GitHub Desktop tool then is going to make a copy of that folder on my computer. So GitHub is the hosting provider, the cloud service provider of the Git source control tool. So Git was founded or started by the Linux creator Linus Torvald here. So it's just going to make a folder, say, hey, it's going to make a copy of this folder, put it here, which is great. So I like it to go in defaults. If you don't like defaults, go ahead and change it. It doesn't really matter where it is, just as long as you do know where it is. So it'll be in your users, documents, GitHub, name of the repository folder. So I'll say clone. So clone then gives me a copy of that folder on my local computer. Then what we get to do is we get to make changes locally, and we push changes from your local repository out to the central or origin repository, the cloud, and we can take changes from the cloud. We can pull them down to our local repository. Now, pretty much all that you folks are going to do is push changes out to the cloud because you're just working individually. There's all sorts of cool things this tool does, and managing source code in teams is fantastic. Take our software engineering class if you want to learn a little bit more about it. I believe Mr. Nasser covers that. So now we've got a folder. So two of our favorite buttons here in the GitHub desktop client, this little purple guy here, are going to be Show an Explorer. It's just going to open the File Explorer right to that folder here so I can see the contents of that file. And then you also have a view on GitHub, which will relaunch out to the website. So either of those are great. So what I'm going to do then, now that I know that I have that folder, I'm going to start up Apache, make sure that's up and running still. Go to NetBeans, I'm going to do a File New Project. And I want a PHP project. Now we're going to do a couple things here. Now this is going to be a little bit funny. So I don't want to put it right into htdocs because there's all sorts of other things that NetBeans creates. So if I go out and look at my htdocs folder and look at PHP project 1, there's other files in here in this NB projects folder, private files, XMLs, property files that we don't actually want to be out and available on the web server. That's probably not an ideal situation to have those out on our web server. Again, there's things you can do on your web server to not make these files accessible, but again, it's probably just better if we just avoid it here. So if I go back to localhost 5080 please, and then what was it, PHP project 1, index PHP. So if I change that from index PHP, if I go to NB project, we see all of these things, and we see the private directory, and I can open up my private properties file. And this is a bad thing, right? So we don't want to be doing this. That was just a quick example. It's okay. And again, it's only local development, not too big of a deal here. But what we want to do is put our source folder somewhere else. So I'm going to go to Browse, I'm going to put that source folder in my documents GitHub, CIS 2454 for summer 2022. And I want to put all of them in this folder here. Okay. And then actually I want them to be in one more folder. Yeah, I don't think, can I do it from here? Can I do browse? I don't remember if I can right click here or not. So I want to do, yeah, I want a new folder here. We'll call this PHP, or I don't know, let's call this Git Intro. How about that? I'll put it in the Git Intro folder, and then I'll call the project Git Intro. Okay, so I'm going to put it inside a folder here, because that'll just keep life a little easier, a little more organized for us. Okay, now next, again, I'm going to change this localhost to port 5080, Git Intro. Now we want to say, hey, I want to copy the files from my sources folder to another location. And in here, I want to copy just the source folder back to htdocs, and we'll call this the Git Intro. So when I run my project, then it will copy stuff from my source folder in GitHub, just the PHP files into the Git Intro location here. So this is really important. So we're going to say, keep everything here in the GitHub folder, my Git repository, so I can track it with source control. It'll keep all the config files there, everything I need, but just copy my sources into htdocs so I can actually run it and play with it here. Go next, next, and finish. And then with NetBeans, you can have more than one project open at a time. I'm going to, let's actually just copy paste this. We'll close that one down. And then in my source folder, do I not have a PHP? Okay, that's fine. I'll make a new PHP, new PHP web page. Call this index.php. And I can take out that comment. You can leave the comment around if you want it. It's not going to hurt anything, but it just takes up space usually. And you know what? Let me just put in here the echo hello world to start. Hello world. And then I've made a bunch of changes. And if I go back to my GitHub desktop client, it's going to show me, hey, there's a bunch of new files. There's an index.php, there's a projects file, another project file. These are all fine. Anything in NB projects is NetBeans projects files. Just let them change. No big deal. The git ignore file was updated. It's saying, hey, ignore everything in this private folder, please. That's actually really helpful. We don't want to add private stuff to source control. And then we can see our index.php file with echoes hello world here as well. So green if it's new, yellow if it's modified, red if it's deleted. So we're going to make a commit. A commit is just a snapshot. It's a picture of that folder at this point in time. So we're going to make a commit, and we'll say, here's my hello world, Git intro, and we'll commit. Now, my local repository has that commit. I've got that snapshot saved. Done. Now, the origin, or the central repository, the cloud doesn't have it, so I need to push that out to the cloud. Once I've pushed it out to the cloud, I can use that View on GitHub button again. It's going to launch the repository, and I should be able to see, hey, now I have a folder. So if it's a folder, you can just click on the name of it, and it opens it. If it's a file, you click on the name of it, and you can actually see the contents of it. You can actually see all of your source code out here right on github.com. It's fantastic, which is really cool. And you'll see that hello world git intro, that's the commit message or the commit summary that I gave it. You can see that there as well. Now I can go in and I can add the rest of my name and all that info in here. We'll paste that in. So hello world and all my info. And I'm going to try, and I'm going to change it to Firefox. So let's run it. Make sure I can actually get to this page. Get to, pun intended, the git intro here, index.php. I can see my hello world project. And if I come back to the GitHub client, oh, no, not a save. Sorry, bad habit. It says, hey, this line 10 was removed and this line 10 was added. Here's new line 11 through 16, lines 11 through 16. So Git will track files at the line level. So you can see line by line by line what changed here. Add Eric's info, commit and push. So now I'm going to have my code out on the cloud, the GitHub hosted cloud here. So once your code is out on GitHub, it's really, 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 really hard to lose it. Right? And then I can go out here. And the other cool thing is you can actually send me links to your files here. These URLs here, you can just send them to me over Discord or email, however you want to do that. And then I can be able to see your code. You don't have to send me attachments. You don't have to zip projects. We can use an actually widely adopted, widely used tool that the industry uses to manage our code. And then we don't have to attach files to D2L and have to download them and upload them and all that nonsense here. So all of your code for your projects will go in GitHub I'll give you repositories for them. We'll get into that later. I just want to get you a taste of what this is going to look like here. And then we'll follow this process for our next lab. The first one is just to get to know your partner, make sure your tools are up and running, do your little intro thing, and we're just using the discussion. For the other labs, you'll actually be committing code to GitHub repositories, and I'll talk to you all about that next week. All right, if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, let me know. If not, have a great week, and I will see you around.